your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
And welcome into the Ask Level podcast, presented by Double T 97.3 and 100.7 The Score.
Woodman, need a little more energy, man.
I'm trying.
That's a big win.
My voice is sounding like Joey McGuire's voice last night after the game. I didn't even have to put a lot into it vocally, but I think my excitement level was pretty good. I was very excited. That was welcomed after the last two FCS games we've seen for Texas Tech. It's pretty nice to do what you're supposed to do in one of these.
Yeah, I think this past weekend's game, I think that you'll see some that will suggest, Murray State's not any good. I don't know anything about Texas Tech yet. Whereas maybe last year and the year before, it's maybe Houston Baptist is really good. Well, they were. Maybe SFA is pretty good. Well, sure. they were at their level. And so I don't know if how many real takeaways. Obviously the main thing is that you won. You did so in commanding fashion, and fortunately and unfortunately, you had three quarterbacks throw a touchdown pass,
right? And
that was very unique. And how you got to that point, though, is the unfortunate part, possibly. Because, you could be without Tyler Shough for a lengthy period of time. I think you hear Coach McGuire after the game talk about AC joint. You hear him talk about collarbone and same shoulders last year, trying to determine the severity of things. And Coach McGuire's words were, well, at least it's September and it's not October. So you put all that in all the ingredients in the soup there, and I think it tastes bad. Because I think the expectation would be that, he's going to be gone for a while. It's just a matter of how long and how severe and all that stuff. So that I hate to not celebrate the win because it was fun. It was a juiced up environment. However, that's the one, things just change just like that. And that's kind of where we may point now until we get some clarification on what Tyler's actual injury and timetable is. But arm in a sling, second half. Right. And the way that Joey McGuire talked about it afterwards would suggest to me that this is going to be Donovan Smith's and maybe Baron Morton's show for a while. Yeah,
there's no official word, but all of the signs that you mentioned point pretty negatively. Hopefully we get to see him back sooner rather than later. And hopefully if it is similar to last year, we get to see that maybe come around a little quicker because the injury happens in game one instead of later. But at the same time, that's been the talking point or the main story of the offseason is you got three guys that can be starters on a lot of rosters. And now you have to utilize that depth immediately. And that being said, man, Donovan Smith, he looked about as good as he could have.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing for not just Tyler and what he may be going through, just geez, man, I can't catch a break, man. Yeah. I mean, how unlucky can I be? But now Donovan has an opportunity. It looks like we'll see. But I think I was also fascinated as I was trying to, decompress and go to bed after the game on Saturday night.
It's kind of hard to do.
How does Zach alter his whole mindset of what he wants this offense to be now? How does he call it differently? Sure. Does he do you major in different things now than you thought you were going to? Do you and because let's be honest, Donovan's one of his strengths is the run game. His ability to use his legs and get out in the open field and even some called runs and all that. Now, do you feel as comfortable doing that, knowing, okay, well, I maybe just have Barron over there now?
Yeah.
And I know that he had some plans to utilize all three quarterbacks in different ways and maybe even on the field at the same time. I don't know when we'll see that, if ever, at this point. So, but to your point, Choice Donovan came in. He was 14 of 16. I think he had 4 touchdown passes. and it looked pretty good. And the one thing we really didn't see from him was him running around everywhere.
No,
he really just was a drop back, kind of extend to play type guy, and so that's a positive sign. And he's got plenty of experience to draw from. The most important thing I can tell you about Donovan Smith is that there's a reason why he was voted team captain. Everybody knew he wasn't likely to be the starting quarterback, but
right.
It says a lot about who Donovan is, not just the player, but the person, that his coaches and his teammates think enough of him that voted him captain. And he's breaking the team down. He's talking to the band.
Yeah.
And some of those things. That tells you a lot about who Donovan is. And but he may get an opportunity here. And now he goes from maybe 2-1, and Barron goes from 3-2. And so their worlds have kind of vastly changed in an instant.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the 14-16, 2-21, all that's great. But I think something that does have to be highlighted, and you mentioned it earlier, you don't know what you can take away necessarily from this game. Most of the time, if you're learning anything concrete in an FCS game, it's negative if you feel like you're learning anything solid. But something that was positive, we'll learn in coming weeks how good it can be, is you really kept Donovan Smith upright. It didn't feel like he was ever really hurried either. And the same for Tyler Shough. Early in the game when you had your starters in on offensive line, that 7 or 8 rotation that Coach McGuire talked about, and the offensive line felt like it did its job pretty well.
Well, the offensive line wasn't a storyline versus Murray State, and that was a good thing.
That is absolutely a good thing.
Because whoever was back there, a lot of time, going through progressions and different things and hitting targets, allowing things to come open. And so, there was no need. You ran the ball well when needed. And because there's going to be some times, because I think the thought is that this group comes into the season as a better run blocking group than a pass blocking group, just in general. Mm-hmm. And they weren't asked to do a ton of that last night simply because Murray State dictated the how you were going to play offense. But Houston may do it completely differently. NC State may be completely, so you're not real sure, because there's going to be some nights where you're going to have to. Okay, we're going to have to run it. They're dropping everybody back. They're giving us a light box. We're going to have to run it. So anyway, but I thought that group in particular was just kind of had a quiet night, which in this way was it's a good thing.
Offense obviously lived up to the hype in game one for the new coordinator Zach Kittley. Defense, what was your take on the defensive side of things?
Philip Bliddy, I thought, he had a couple of sacks, and
nice game.
Because Tyree Wilson led you in sacks last year, and he only had 7, and so Bliddy had 2 last night against the Racers. I keep saying last night; I'm all over the place, and I can't remember what day it is. I think he, you allowed 1.2 yards per rush. I think that's something you feel good about. The concern is some of the chunk plays that you gave up. I think Coach McGuire had talked to me going into the locker room and then again after the game about, corners' eyes, maybe get, biting on some of the play action fakes.
Yep.
You got to get that corrected, because guess what? What do you think Houston's going to do when they see that on film? Like, oh, we can get these guys.
Play action.
Get them to bite just a little bit. And then, you've got a much older, better quarterback in Clayton Tune for Houston. They come off of a 3 overtime win in a very hostile environment against UTSA.
That was something.
Yeah, a couple of 12-2 teams from last year, and that was a in-state heavyweight fight. I mean, those teams are both really good.
Yeah.
I mean,
right out the gate.
Yeah, as an aside, UTSA is going to have a hard time getting people to come there and play just because of how difficult it's going to be. But is what it is. That's their problem. But I thought that's something that you didn't feel great about. But if you take those few plays out, and that's not how it works, but take those few plays out, all the stats look pretty good. But it's those big, long passes that can bite you a little bit. And one of those being completed, depending on how the game is going or who you're playing, can determine a game. So you've got to get better there. I thought defensively, one moment in the game, though, the game was largely out of reach, and I guarantee you Dean Hood, the coach for the Racers, probably would do this over again because of what happened.
For sure.
But it was the last play of the half. You can kick a meaningless field goal just to get points, but I believe it was a fourth and fairly long.
Fourth and goal from the 8.
Yeah,
I think.
He goes for it, and then his quarterback DJ Williams goes down, and it pretty. You kind of hear a pretty severe ankle injury. I don't know what that looks like, but
looks pretty bad. Yeah.
Point is, you didn't allow any points on the scoreboard at that point, and I thought that was a pretty good stand up because they had allowed one of those big long passes right before that, and you held Murray State to no points on the scoreboard, so you kind of go in the locker room feeling good. Although the score had long been determined, you think the outcome.
Yeah. I mean, largely, like you said, you kind of have to take everything we saw against Murray State with a large grain of salt because it is.
It's a team that's won back-to-back, had back-to-back winning seasons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to poo-poo what you did, but it feels like this is the week we actually learn some more about Texas Tech, and that goes for any team that in the Big 12 or anywhere across the country that played an FCS opponent for the most part. You get to learn a lot more this week, but it's just different than what you anticipated.
You're going to learn a lot more this week because this will be a very motivated, talented, ranked Houston team that will at some point be a conference rival. And I think they'll have athletes and old athletes and speed and you've got some former Red Raiders on that roster. Keyshawn Carter, being one of them. That and again, Dana's team went 12-2 last year, and they figured out a way to win against UTSA, and so that they'll be an absolute handful this weekend. I will say too, I thought the atmosphere in the stadium was awesome.
I was going to ask you, I mean, you get a better feel for that down there on the sideline. Some different elements to it with speakers and such, but
there was some new that I had never been a part of before. Like when you go to Norman, they set up these speakers on the field, and it's for pregame only. Then they tear them down. And it's loud down there. It's meant to create this vibe during pregame, and it's the music is just being pumped right down there. And these are like big speakers. These aren't like 15 whatever that you put in your Jeep like you've got choice. but they take those down. So I noticed when I went down on the field on Saturday night, there's pretty big speakers down there on the field, and that it was putting out some sound, bone rattling sound. But I don't know what it sounded like if you're sitting anywhere on the west side of the stadium, because those speakers are pushing that sound to the student section. But it was nothing like I've experienced before, and it's pumping in the music that is coming in the deal. And I would say this: the music for 4 quarters, anytime the opposing offense is on the field, they're just hitting it with you over and over and over again. Yeah. And I know Joey was very involved in that, but that was a completely different vibe and experience, and I loved it. It made it feel important. It made it feel energetic. It made it feel like this is a place where I want to be. From
my perch, it felt like this was I mean, I'm a little high up there, but it still felt like this is the most energized and maybe even biggest crowd you've had for a FCS game in a long time. A crowd that stuck around, and when you're up by 42-10 at halftime, it's hard to expect a crowd to stick around a long time. We'll get real testers later, the problems with players with students leaving at halftime and that sort of thing in an actual real game, a real tight game. But man, it felt like it felt like the buzz that we felt in the offseason may be translating to inside the stadium.
There's that. I think he's very smart with the Raider Walk, because what you do is you get people congregating around that part of the stadium like, a couple hours before, and you get them there to kind of touch and feel and see and all those things with the team walking in. And then you have the music and everything. But I thought it was a fun environment to be in. And the football had a lot to do with that, right? There was a lot to cheer for. You almost kind of got bored with the touchdowns. And I say that like tongue in cheek. I'm never bored with touchdowns, but it was like when you put up is 63 points and all that, then you just okay. Well, there's another one and another one. But kudos to the folks over there putting on the game presentation. I think Joey had his hands all over some of that. The one regret that I have is I'm ready for the first turnover because they'll play the Purge.
Oh yeah,
and he's
which they played that like before the game.
Well,
right?
he's excited about.
I like it,
but that you'll get that button hit every time that they get a takeaway. And I don't know if the stadium explodes if they take 3 away, or that you get pyro, or I don't know what happens, but maybe there's some payoff there. But
maybe,
yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I'm glad we talked about that because it was noticeable. And I will say that this weekend against Houston, you will absolutely need every bit of it and probably more because your crowd will have to help you win that game, in my opinion.
For anybody that's into this kind of thing, Tech opens as a 3-point favorite at home.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be dicey, man.
Yeah, should be a lot of fun. Did you? This was actually one of our questions submitted on Ask Level. We'll get to some more questions towards the end, but someone asked, Bart asked, does your confidence level change at all for this weekend's game based off of the results from both the Houston game and what you saw from Texas Tech, or does it remain the same?
This may not be fair. I probably don't feel quite as confident with the Shough situation.
Okay.
But that's not fair to Donovan or anybody because of how well you played. There's a reason he won that job.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
There's a reason why Zach Kitley, stood up early last week and said there's not a GA, a trainer, a coach that thought anybody but other than Tyler Shough should have won the job. And so much so that Coach McGuire and I really didn't even ever discuss it formally before we announced it. It was just kind of – and so –
No, I get that.
Yeah, you've got all
yeah.
that. So I don't. And here's the thing: this is me being weak-minded, but things are now like they're not like we thought they were going to be, and so now I'm guilty as anybody. Now I've got to adjust my mindset and go, "Hey, man, everything's going to be okay," or or I don't know. But I just we're trained when we do these, when we talk on these shows and do different things and formats that. You try to think of all the different scenarios and hypotheticals and all these things, and so, yeah, you may be more than fine. This may be a bit of a blow. We may not even really realize that yet. I have no idea, and I hope Donovan takes the baton if it is his and runs with it and never looks back. But you're just not real. You're not real sure what you're going to get. I just know this. I think there's a couple things. If your crowd will show up and you can run the ball well, I think you'll be fine. Because I did see that, Houston struggled in that loud environment in the Alamo Dome a little bit. There was some false start penalties. There was some different things. They're not perfect, but they have an old veteran quarterback that made a play at the end, and he kept them in the game and did some things. And I just think they just kind of gutted it out and showed enough moxie so they won't. Again, that's just an old, athletic, motivated team that is the culture of winning. And you handled your business against them last year.
Yeah, last year's game, largely you had some huge defensive plays against that veteran quarterback, that exact same one that's going to be starting this year in Clayton Tune. But you made some plays offensively when it mattered. I don't know. It felt like you just completely jumped right into a hole at the beginning of that game last year. Yeah, you were still able to overcome it. Obviously, you don't want to do that again this year and have to dig yourself out of anything. But I think, and this is personal opinion, you can react to it. I think your biggest key to this game, or the spot I'm going to be watching the most, it goes back to that offensive line. Is that offensive line going to be able to protect Donovan where he has time to go through reads? Is that offensive line going to be able to get that push up front to let you run the football like you need to against this Houston team? At least offensively, that's where I'm going to be focused.
And what's funny is that Houston didn't see Donovan at all last year.
True.
Yeah, this is a new deal,
brand new
for him, for them and him. But and there's something different too about, and I'm sure he would tell you because he experienced both feelings last year. There's something different about preparing as kind of the backup versus preparing as the starter all week too. But no, this is the best part about him being able to have all this experience and all that stuff. But that's the beauty also of him being back there, is that if the offensive line isn't perfect, he can still his skill set allows you to do some different things, and there's some things that the defense just simply can't account for. When if I look up and I see the backs of a bunch of DBs, man, I can just take off and go. And it's just the defensive coordinator's worst nightmare when you get these athletic running quarterbacks, and that's what he is. So, yeah, but that'll be an interesting. Yeah, that offensive line will need to continue to play well. Really, I mean, there's really not going to be, because against NC State, they've got a veteran defense. Texas is going to be decent on that side of the ball. They always are. So I mean, and it's crazy because you come away and the offensive line, as we've talked about, for the most part, played pretty well, and it was a non-storyline in a good way, and yet it kind of gets buried because of some of the other things that happen, and the different quarterbacks and receivers being involved and things like that.
All right, let's go ahead and get to a few Ask Level questions. Someone asked, Level, did you feel like the running backs were underutilized in Game 1?
No, I mean, I think you have to understand that I think Taj Brooks has been kind of – there's been some load management with him in fall camp. I mean, I think that, Joey even said it coming into the game. He'd be on maybe a bit of a pitch count. Yeah, and I don't think we saw him in the second half, and you didn't need to see him in the second half because of the 3 touchdowns. Roderick got a few more carries. I actually think it was Murray State dictated a lot of this. Mm-hmm. I think the thought was Murray State was going to really drop back and keep everything in front of them, and what we got was they actually played some press coverage where they kind of bit on some of the motions and some different things, and it just opened things up down the field, and you had some quarterbacks and receivers that made plays down the field. And so because there's going to be times when we go, man, I think the tight ends and receivers are being underutilized. Sure. It's just going to be kind of a week-to-week scenario.
That's exactly what Zach Kitley told us a week ago, is he said, look, my offense is going to be based off of what the defense is giving you. If you're going to be –
you need to be a chameleon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've got to be all things to all people. Like, I've got to be able to – we're an equal opportunity offense. So, like, I mean, we – and the best analogy I can give you is I go back to the Final Four Texas Tech basketball team, because you want to speed it up and get up down the floor. We can do that. You want to slow it down and play half court only. We can do that. They could play whatever style you wanted, and I think ultimately this is what Zach wants his offense to be. We want to be able to major in several different things. And again, some people say, well, if you do that, you can't be really good at anything. But that's not how he views it. I mean, we need to be able to, play short yardage and smash mouth. We need to be able to throw it way down the field and spread it out. We need to be able to go fast. We need to be able to kind of milk the clock. I mean, all these different things, and that's how he learned. That's what Cliff Kingsbury taught him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when Cliff Kingsbury is a perfect example. When he had the horses in the stable, running back like DeAndre Washington, he pounded the football over and over. Mm-hmm.
When he Pat Mahomes,
when he got Pat Mahomes, sling it all over the field.
Yeah, and I think that's the sign of good coaches. They don't just have square peg round hole philosophy in that this is what we do, guys. You need to learn this, and if you can't do this thing, then it's y'all's fault. No, coaches adapt. Personnel gets a little bit differently. Yeah, there's some certain things you want, but I think Joey talked about that after the game. Hey, look, man, we went empty. We did 11 personnel. We did 12 personnel. They may have even shown a 13 personnel group, and what I mean by that is one running back and either one tight end, 2 tight end, or 3 tight ends, and you just showed all different kinds of things, and that's in this portal era. It gets more people involved, it gets more guys engaged, and it's also a pain for the defense because they got to learn against all these different things.
Yeah, got time for a couple more questions here for the Ask Level podcast. This one says, Level, can you compare or give us a comparison of that game compared to other openers that you have seen from new head coaches at Tech?
Well, the funny thing is that was the most points scored by any head coach in their debut ever, in the history of ever. So there's really no comparison because this one was kind of history making. If you get caught up into how many points the team scores when the head coach's first game at the school, I mean,
Sure.
but it is a fact. But I thought, I don't know, it's hard to remember back to some of the debuts. I would just say though that years from now, I'll remember that you wore Murray State out, but I'll also remember, like, here we go again on a quarterback injury, or potentially, because it's like it's
never
just,
fails.
This has been what you've dealt with for now years, and yeah, there's a few years sprinkled in there, but it's like, seriously, man. And I thought that the whole, I know you're a big Mike Leach curse guy, but I thought that was exercised after the goings on there.
I was hoping it was
in Memphis. I mean, it had long since been exercised, but maybe you should pay Mike Leach and it'll all go away.
Is that,
Choice.
Yeah, that what I need to do?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh, Level, when you and I talked this in the off season, we did shows together. I do remember we're going through position groups and you're talking about where you've got confidence and where there's still question marks. And one of them that you listed in the question mark category was receiver. Do you walk away from Saturday night feeling better about that, or is it still I got to wait and see against better competition?
Both. I think the best thing about the game versus Murray State is that you had 14 guys catch a pass, and you had some guys really step up, and Miles Price wasn't one of them.
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day,
he's
he's going to be one of your guys that really generates the most stats and things like that. And so the fact that you didn't have to lean on him and you still were very productive with Loic and Jerron Bradley and on it went. Because I think at some point, too, you're going to hear a lot more from Xavier White. You're going to hear a lot more from Nehemiah Martinez. There's going to be some other guys that kind of work their way in. I think Brady Boyd is somebody that's got – and I'm still big on Cleveland and Sparkman.
Sure.
They just can't seemingly stay very healthy. However, having said that, I think that they will see different level of athlete and coverage versus Houston, versus NC State, versus Texas. They're going to deal with some physicality.
Yeah.
They're going to deal with some, experience that they haven't seen yet. And I think that's what I'm kind of curious to see, kind of how they adjust to that. And Donovan will have to deal with some of that as well.
Sticking with the receivers for a final question here in the Ask Level podcast. Ben asks, if you could buy stock in any one of the 6'4" or taller receivers, who are you going with? So he's got listed Sparkman, Bradley, Cleveland, and Fungi.
Well, it'd either be Bradley or Loic. I think probably Loic, and maybe the slimmest of margins over Bradley. I think Loic is the get behind the defense guy because how well he runs. Mm-hmm. I think Bradley is more of the bully ball 50-50 guy. Just throw it up. I won't, because what Bradley does is he kind of plays the position like a basketball player, which he was.
Yeah.
This is Jalen Tyson's one of his best friends that's over on the Mark Adams' basketball team, and I think I think he knows how to use his body, and he's very physical, and he's about 6'5", I don't know, 210, 215, but he plays big. Loic's game is speed. And you need some of that, but the coordinator is also helping them scheme them open too.
Man,
scheming them open, because I hope people paid attention to Miles Price being used as a decoy a lot versus Murray State. A lot of the jet sweep stuff, and it moves those linebackers just enough, and it's and that's all it takes. And guys get misaligned, or like there's some slight confusion, and away we go. Yeah,
it seemed like Miles Price was a non-factor in a good way until, I think, the third quarter. You saw 3 plays in a row, or three out of 4 plays go to Miles Price intentionally just to get him going. But other than that, you didn't have to lean on him, and that's such a luxury to have those other guys. Hopefully it does stick, and you still can lean on all of those other guys when you get to some tougher competition. Final one. Looking towards Houston, where is the biggest strength of the Cougars, and where is their weakness that you can exploit, if there is one?
Well, I don't know. I think that's probably the scariest part about Houston is their lack of weakness. They're this is really a solid team that won 12 games last year. They bring a lot back. They've brought in more portal type guys. They've kind of started to go the SMU route a little bit, and the guys that leave Houston and go sign somewhere else, Houston's kind of tapping into them and getting them to come back. So that's probably what I would say is their strength, is their lack of weakness for in no uncertain terms. And seriously, that's the way that works, because I don't see any sort of position group. And there may be a few guys that, okay, well, we can pick on this guy or whatever. I'm just saying, but overall, they're just pretty solid. But the scariest part of the intangible is they'll be very motivated, and they'll come in here and and all those things. And you'll be motivated too. Don't get it twisted. But it's just with what you did to them last year, that they just started reeling them off after that game last year. And I thought they beat you for a half, but you beat them for a half, and your half was better than their half. Yeah, that's right. So Clayton Tune, though, he's the one that makes me the most nervous. That's because he's a veteran quarterback and he makes plays. He's a winner. And that's always scary. Yeah.
He's a year older, but you flustered him last year. I mean,
true.
Got in his head, had a pick, I think pick 6, had a couple picks. Yeah, you were able to get it done against him last year. We'll see if the Red Raiders can do so coming up this Saturday. Red Raiders and Cougars at Jones Stadium. Of course, you'll hear Level on the call for that one at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon.
Keep hope alive, Woodman. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Had fun. It's Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. Been listening to the Ask Level podcast here, powered by Double T 97.3. We'll talk to you next week.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3. For more from Lubbock Sports Station, go to doublet973.com.